So here we're going to talk about how to configure the G1000 to both track and interpret the data from a VOR. And the way we're going to do that is using, like any kind of radio navigation, you're going to start with a fits test, right? So first thing we need in the fits test is our frequency. And the way we're going to get our frequency is either through your maps, your plates, whatever you have in front of you, or if you go, I'll just clear it out so you know how to get to it, right? If you go to the nearest page, you'll find nearest VORs, and that's just one of the submenus. When you find nearest VOR, you have to go cursor and then scroll down, scroll up, find the VOR that you want. Let's say we wanted the YYC VOR. That's going to be a frequency of 116.7. Now, in an actual G1000, I'm not sure if it'll do this in the sim. I should be able to go in and actually set that frequency to YYC. I don't think it's going to let me do this now, but nevertheless, if it doesn't let you do the auto frequency thing, just put in 1167 inside your nav box, right? So you got nav 1, nav 2, just like your conventional airplane would with a comm box, but it's all integrated here. So nav 1, we're going to set 116.7 all the way up here. Now, just like a comm, right, this is our standby. And if we want to set to nav 2, we just hit the nav button, moves down to nav 2, and we could set the standby as well, but we only are going to use nav 1 for now. So it's in the standby, we need to move it to the active, so we're going to use the flip-flop button that I call it to move it all the way to that. It's supposed to be 1167 actually, 116.7, there we go. So we have it set in, and then it's already identified as YYC. Now, conventionally, what you would have to do is basically hit the actual G1000 will have a little button right here for tuning in the frequency, and you could hit that to squelch it, and then you would go on the main panel, and then you would go to nav 1, then you would hit that button, and then you would listen to a Morse code. But because we're fancy with the G1000, it does it for you. If it says YYC right there, then it's auto-identified that frequency. So now we've done frequency, we've identified it, now we have to test it. In order to test it, we're going to have to set it up so we can actually see it on the HSI. So how do we do that? Well, we have it set up with a GPS CDI, but that's not very useful to me because I'm not using a GPS, I'm using a VOR. So I'm going to go to the CDI button, and then I'll cycle through it to find nav 1. And what you'll find is all of a sudden YYC is lit up in green because that's the one I'm using on my HSI. Now, just like the GPS, I'm going to have a little course button right here, right inside's barrow. Outside is going to be course, the little one. And I can use that to start setting my OBS settings. So unlike the GPS, OBS is all blocked off because, well, I don't care. OBS is a VOR innate feature. They all have OBS because otherwise it would just not really be a VOR at all. So I can start to move that, and the easiest way is actually just to click that button, and then it's always going to center it with a 2 indication. So think GPS mode, right? That's your VOR equivalent of direct 2. Why? Because we've centered it. We have a 2 indication indicated by that 2 flag, and that heading would be what we would fly to go direct to the station via our present position. But we're still in the test mode, so we're going to go test it up. And the way I'm going to do that is do 10 degrees left, 10 degrees right, because full scale deflection is actually passing through about 10 radials. So I'll move it 10 degrees to the right, and then I'll center it, and then I'll go 10 degrees to the left, and then we have a full scale deflection like such at 10 degrees left. So we know our instruments are reading correctly, right? If you did 10 degrees and it did a half scale deflection, that means full scale deflection is like 20 degrees, and that's really weird because that's just not how VORs are supposed to be set up at all. So there's either a timing error or something along those lines. Now you want to make sure that your instrument's flag is working, so you're going to turn it 90 degrees to the present position, and there's your flag flip, right? Now we got a 2 flag, now we got a from flag, 2 flag, and vice versa. So it's all tested up. I believe that it works in my opinion based on my test, and now we're just going to set it. So if we just want to track it inbound, right, I'll set it so that it has a centered CDI and then a 2 indication, and then I'll just put my heading bug right on it, like such. Now, if I wanted to set it up any other variation, I would just adjust the VOR so that it would show, you know, whatever I got in, let's say, a hold clearance, or you're departing off of a star, or SID rather, and then they said intercept this radial inbound or outbound. You'd set it up so that it works to display the information that you want.